All right. This is part three of probably, I'm guessing, five. I started to say three or four videos ago. Well, 3 videos ago. And then I realized I haven't got to the tiling phase of this guy building his own bathroom on a flip house. So there's been part one, there's been part two, this is part three, and you can go to my channel to look at part one and part two. It's a as friendly as I can make it critique. You know, critiques are never nice, but I just felt that it was kind of like, yeah. So to kind of preface this whole thing, if you haven't watched part one and part two, YouTube algorithm and their feed and all that stuff, I just happened to get fed this video off to the right screen about a week ago with this guy building his own shower, and like the screenshot that he showed and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, he's going to build a shower pan. So I often go onto other videos, see if there are little tricks and things that I could learn from other people. When I saw his video, I was like aghast. I was like, "Oh my god." And then I saw his subscribership, and he's got almost 2 million subscribers, 1.8 and change. So I decided, because out of all the tile people on YouTube, he has, well, he's not a tile guy, but he has the highest subscribership, and he did so many things wrong in the shower. I just felt an obligation, the best I could, to push back on it, because the video is only like 3 months old, and I just don't want people to go on his video and think that these are the correct ways. As I said in my other video, part two, people are going to go onto his video and go, "Oh, okay, this is cool. I can do this." But then he follows up on the next video with his mistakes. Or, like you're getting ready to see, he's like, "Oh, for all the people that critiqued and gave me advice and all that stuff, da 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 da, on the last video, thank you very much. And for those haters, well, thank you too." The problem is, he's saying that on the next video. So all these other people who think they have it done right because he's showing how to do it, and doesn't self-correct while he's in the process of doing things, is the problem that I have. If he had self-corrected himself during those videos, I wouldn't be here right now, but he didn't until later on the next video. So anyway, without further ado, this is the part three. I think part four is when he starts actually getting in the tiling, but I got a lot to say about this little 11-minute clip because it's going to run 30 minutes, I'm sure. I just have a lot to say. So without further ado, let me get this guy up here. And whoops, did I remove it? I sure did. Hold on a minute. Let me see. I've removed it. Oh no, now I got to go find it again.
I want to give one huge thanks to all of the nice comments and to all of the mean ones that basically hate what I'm doing. I'm trying to learn through experience, and that's going to include some mistakes. I think the only problem would be not fixing them, and obviously I'm doing my best at getting the best result. And that
Right. Without fixing them. The problem is that you're fixing them later, which is how I preface this video.
That includes fixing the mistake. Hey everybody, my name's Mike Montgomery, and today we've got 5 simple steps for installing and waterproofing fiber cement board walls for your shower. After this video, you'll be ready for tile, so let's get started on modern builds. Step number 1 is cutting your fiber cement board. And we're using 1/2 inch, 3 foot by 5 foot panels for our shower walls. This stuff goes by the product name HardieBacker.
Right.
But there's multiple products and brands that are basically the same. This tool is called a scoring knife, and it's what we're going to use to...
Okay, he's going to reference the cement board because that's what it is. HardieBacker is 90% cement. They don't tell you what the other 10% is, but it's not a fiber cement board. It is a cement board for real. There are fiber backer boards out there. There's a bunch of them I don't want to name because I don't like them. But anyway, that being what it is, when he's scoring and snapping, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm going to get ahead of myself. When he's scoring and snapping and all this stuff, and doing what he's doing, I disagree with it wholeheartedly. There are times, especially on steam showers, where I will use HardieBacker because it is a rigid, very hard cement board. I just feel better about it. Very rarely do I use it, but when I do use it, I cut it outside. Same as Durarock, same as Wonderboard, any of those products, I cut outside with a skill saw. And do I ruin a blade? Yes, but blades are like $8, not even 8. I think they're less than that. You know, a cheap skill saw blade, I won't ruin just doing one shower, but he talks about that, and I don't have a problem with ruining a blade to get to a better end, because scoring and snapping, I can tell you over the years, is not, especially on HardieBacker, is not the way to go.
Make a groove that will snap along our fiber cement board.
Look at all that
Once
work.
it's ready, make sure and put pressure down on your straight edge and then pull the end of the cement board to you. Everything should go great if you've made a groove that's deep enough. And in this
Exactly, a groove that's deep enough. This is craziness.
clip, you can see what happens if your groove isn't deep enough or if you don't support the break with whatever straight edge you're using. For this clip, I counted a total of 11 scores. I also paid a little bit of attention to each end. That way I could get a really clean break.
11 scores. Why would you score a cement board? It doesn't make any sense. Take it outside and use a skill saw, and you'd be done by the 5th score.
I'll put a lot of weight here on my straight edge, and we should get a clean break. Beautiful. And what's great about this is it's really low dust. You can also use a sharp utility.
No. It's not low dust. It is not low dust at all. Any dust is dust. Especially if you're doing it inside, you're going to create dust. But that's why I do it outside with a skill saw, because it does create a lot of dust when you're cutting it with an electric tool. But it's so much easier and better and cleaner.
Knife for this, just know that you'll run through blades. And this takes about the same number of passes or scores. The nice thing about being able to use a utility knife is that pretty much everyone has one, and you'll need one on hand anyways because it's great for cleaning up corners. A jigsaw is also effective for cutting fiber cement board. Just make sure you mask up before you do.
No, a jigsaw. No. What did I say? A skill saw. Why would you use a jigsaw for?
And you can see how I offset my board 1.5 inches. The jigsaw is my favorite powered saw to use because the blades are super cheap. You can get a big pack for just like $10.
Right. And for those little corners that he was talking about using a razor knife, a jigsaw would be nice to have. I haven't owned a jigsaw now for probably the better part of 25 years. I just don't have I don't have a need for it. I would use it maybe once every, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. I would use it if I had one, but I don't have one because it's not necessary in my type of work. It isn't his because apparently he does a lot of carpentry. Yes, for cleaning corners, not a razor knife, a jigsaw would be perfect. A jigsaw would also be perfect for cutting holes and squares in the board if you had to.
Regular saw also works, but I wouldn't want to sacrifice my super nice blade.
Then don't have a super nice blade. He just said I would use a skill saw, but I don't want to sacrifice my super nice blade. Take your super nice blade off and put a, $5, $6 one on there. Ooh.
It's also totally possible to do a long, even thin rip cut on a sheet of this HardieBacker board. It can be a little bit difficult to break, but if you're ever struggling with trying to snap a small piece, you can use a hammer on the seam with something underneath, and that should loosen everything up.
Oh my God. Work smarter, not harder. And again, a friendly critique, because a homeowner or DIYer, this is what my channel is about and has always been about. That somebody that has never done this before could go on my 700 plus videos or somebody else's videos and figure this stuff out the easy way. This guy is making your work much harder.
This whole hammer idea also applies to small cutouts. You don't need a jigsaw or a power tool to make them. Just make a deep groove where you want the break to be with your scoring knife, and then support the backside with a straight edge. Then the hammer should...
No, you're going to should. Operative word. The hammer should hit it right if you scored it right. But if you don't, you've just broken that corner. This is where the jigsaw would come in. I don't get it.
To knock that loose. And you can clean everything up with a utility knife. A diamond disc on an angle grinder is maybe one of the smoothest cutting tools for fiber cement board. Plus, you can cut tile and stuff with it.
It's not fiber cement board. It's cement board. But anyway, why would you use an angle grinder? The time that it took you to go hook that up, first of all, you're in a garage, so you're making a whole lot of dust inside of that garage, although it doesn't matter. It's a flip house. But if you're going to use a skill saw, you can get a straighter cut with a skill saw than you ever would with an angle grinder. Trust me on that.
And that's step 1 complete. And now we're moving on to step 2, installation. So here comes our first piece. And the first thing we're gonna do is just make sure it fits. And then I'll use a couple of screws as...
Okay, this is the main thing. Some of those things I talked about previously are kind of incidental things. If you watch the video 2 and video 1 on this series, you'll see that there's little nitpicky things, right? So I'm going to call everything that I said a little nitpicky because you're going to figure all this stuff out on your own. When we get to the shower, that's when I get serious. So he's putting a cement board on top of his cement shower floor. Mortar. The mortar and the cement board should not be married. Any board that I put up, I always raise up about an inch to an inch and a half off of the floor. Normally, it wouldn't be an issue if he's doing a complete sealed system. You could actually do what he's doing, although I'm not comfortable with it because, like, why would you do that? It's easier to raise that board an inch, inch and a quarter, or an inch and a half if you have to. And he is doing a water in, water out system on his floor pan, on his shower pan, which means he's setting his cement board on top of it. So he's going to, and I'm spoiler alert, he's going to waterproof all the walls. But it's irrelevant that he waterproofed the walls. Walls don't fail, first of all. Secondly, and more importantly, waterproofing the walls, but not waterproofing the pan now makes wicking action happen. And I guarantee you in 10, 15 years, there's going to be all kinds of mold and mildew on that HardieBacker in the back of it.
Spacers so that this sits about an 1/8 inch off of our mortar bed.
1/8 inch?
The screws I'm using are made for fiber cement board and they're 1 5/8 inches. And that matches 1/2 inch thick material. Next, I'm just going to grab my level.
You don't need 1 5/8 screws. Again, I'm nitpicking. 1 1/4 screws are great for that. It's not a problem. And if you want to use the proprietary screws, then by all means, you can do that. But you're going to be waterproofing the whole thing anyway, so the screws are never going to see any water. If you use a steel screw, it's never going to rust because it's never going to see any water. Having said that, that 1/4 inch gap that he's talking about the floor, no, water will still wick up it because guess what he's going to do with that gap? That little tiny 1/4 inch gap that he put down there, he's going to fill it in with thin set. I guarantee you.
To make sure that everything's sitting plumb, and now that looks really good. And be sure to come in a couple of inches from your edge so the screw doesn't damage the sheet. And before we get too far into it, I'm going to extend a line where I've got wires and nail plates covering the stud. It's best to space these rows about 12 inches. I'm going to do 3 rows, which is pretty close to that. And be careful you don't over torque these screws.
If I'm not mistaken, most backer boards call for about 8 to 9 inches spacing. Again, it's a small potato type of thing. 12 inches, that's a whole foot. I'm not putting 1 screw every foot. I'm going to go, well, personally, I go probably about every 6 to 8 inches, but you know, 8 inches is about right.
I'll show you what I mean. The screw should stop when it's flush with the surface of your cement board. You don't want this to recess into it. Pretty much follow the same rules as drywall. It's also a bad idea to install this bottom row of screws too low because you don't want to puncture the pan liner where there might be standing water.
There's not going to be standing water because, again, you're waterproofing your backer board. The only way there could be standing water is what you did by marrying your mortar bed with your backer board. Then, yes, potentially it could wick up into the pan, and I've seen rusted screws on pan liner up against the studs like that, but it's not a big deal. I usually come up about probably 4 or 5 inches off of the floor. My bottom screw will be about 4 or 5 inches. Not a big deal.
That's one piece down. And this is one nice thing about pre-cutting all your pieces is you can just go. In between each piece, we also want an 1/8 inch gap, so I'll throw a screw there and a screw here. The reason for that 1/8 inch gap is it allows a little bit of space for thin set to set into and bond all of those pieces and seams together.
More or less. 1/8 inch gap. So I think I misspoke. I believe what he said is a 1/8 inch gap on the backer board that's meeting the mortar pan, and now he's talking about 1/8 inch gap again. I've never had a gap in my backer board. There's no harm, no foul, right? Materials expand and contract and do what they do and all that stuff in all houses. But having a little 1/8 of an inch gap is not a big deal. Like, you could do it, but there's not going to be a failure. Oops, I didn't put 1/8 inch gap.
To finish out this side, I'll utilize our leftover pieces. I really wish these were about 1.5 inches taller. Whenever I was using these smaller pieces, I made sure to custom cut everything to length so that they all met on vertical 2x4 studs. That way there was plenty of material.
Now, what he could have done there, he has this backer board, and this is a small potato. He has this backer board elongated, right? So that's horizontal. He could have, if he wanted to, on that top piece, so he doesn't have to do a little 4-inch cut at the top. If he wanted to, he could have had it horizontal, vertical. He could have had a backer board vertical. It would have been a full piece going up there. You're going to have probably 2 pieces of backer board that you're going to need for that, because it looks to be about probably 2.5, 3 foot tall. So yes, a couple extra sheets of backer board. That way you don't have to cut that little sliver piece at the top.
To screw onto. I just need to make sure and avoid this nail plate as well with this small piece to finish out this side.
Small potato.
That's one full side complete. Measuring and cutting for obstacles like this mixing valve is easy. I'm just going to measure off of this wall to measure how far it is on each side. That's 20.5 to 26.25. And here it's 4 3/8 to 8 inches. I'll transfer those marks to my cement board, and I'll make sure to subtract an 1/8 inch for our gap. And I'll show you how you can cut this with a scoring knife. Although a good alternate is a jigsaw. And next I'll score it into segments like a...
Yes. An alternate, no, an alternate should not be a jigsaw. He owns a jigsaw. You know, all you do is just put a hole in there, you know, with a drill bit, and then use a jigsaw for the rest. I don't know why he's making this harder.
Pizza. And now we'll knock it out.
No.
Remember, the more you score and the deeper you score, the cleaner this whole break will be, but the utility knife comes in clutch to get this all finessed. I'll use the diamond wheel on my angle grinder to make this carve out for the niche. It should help preserve this thin sliver on the end. I was honestly a little surprised that 1-inch piece held on. Really cool. Okay, let's see how it fits. Perfect! The only thing unique about attaching this panel is that niche, and I made sure to put screws all the way around the borders. A carbide or diamond tipped hole saw is great for the shower outlet, but you could also use a spade bit. I used an 1.5 inch hole saw, and that's plenty of room for the shower arm to thread through. Anything bigger really is unnecessary. I used more cutoff material to finish up this wall, then I moved to the back. And using this tall piece should help us stagger our seams, which I like. Staggering the seams should just help prevent any cracks or shifting over time. And I used...
Cracks and shifting does not happen on a wall. And even if it did, you're already putting RedGuard on top of it. Guess what RedGuard is, besides a waterproofer? First and foremost on the label of RedGuard, it's a crack preventer and a waterproofer. So you put 2 or 3 coats on the wall, and even if those boards left and right moved away from each other slightly over the years, even if they did, there's no cracking going to go through because you have basically a crack preventer.
This blue tape on the mortar bed.
Oh, that bothers me so much. Look at that. Look at that tiny little gap on the mortar pan going right there to the HardieBacker. That bothers me a lot.
To mark the stud location since I wouldn't be able to see them. Last piece. Here we go. It was a little tough getting a screw in there as a spacer, so I used my chisel to wedge open a little bit of a gap and fit it in there. The shower is still far from done, but man.
And this is what I was talking about. You see how he did these pieces vertically? Right? So he just closed that gap where he doesn't have to do a little sliver cut at the top. He could have done that on the other side too. Small potatoes.
Formed a lot here in step 2. That's boards up. Moving on to step 3. On all of our seams where our panels meet, we're going to install seam tape and apply thin set to seal all of our cracks.
Okay, this is a thing that I disagree with wholeheartedly, 110%. I don't believe personally that tape is needed on shower walls with any backer board that you use. Tape, just like sheetrock, you tape sheetrock, right? You tape it all the seams of sheetrock. Yes, I would do that. Why? Because with that incremental movement that houses do, you're going to have a crack between that seam, and you want to, you know, as he said, kind of marry the 2 pieces of backer board. So therefore, you put tape there and then mud over it, and that's tried and true on sheetrock, on any type of wallboard for that matter. But the fact that you're going to waterproof it is kind of like it's you're just doubling up, right? If you weren't waterproofing it, then yes, definitely tape. But why tape and waterproof? It doesn't make any sense to me personally. But then again, that's just me. It's a small potato thing, but I just push back on that because it's totally unnecessary. I've never had a wall fail. I've never had a phone call where a customer called me and said, "My walls have failed. Come help me." It's always ankle below. It's always a shower pan. It's never, ever, did I say ever? Capital ever the walls. The only time it's the walls is when back in the day, sheetrock would sit on top of a tub edge because they didn't put it on the lip. Then yes, water compromised the sheetrock and all that stuff. But on a shower, walls are never an issue.
And be sure you're using tape made for cement board.
Nah,
You'll apply the tape to all of your vertical and your horizontal seams.
make sure you use tape that's meant for a cement board, blah, 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 whatever.
And it's easy to cut it to length if you use the edge of your joint knife. We're also taping and bedding all the corners. They're a little trickier, but you can pick up a specialty corner trowel if you want. And some people out there like to sandwich the tape in between thin set, basically apply a thin layer of thin set, then the tape, and then a little bit more of the mud. But that's not necessary, and the tape should be sticky enough that you shouldn't have any problems. Now, I'm working in a remodel, and that means a lot of times you've got to adjust to what you've got. And right now, my drywall sits proud of the cement board a little.
This is craziness, right? So this happens to me on occasion, rare occasion, because usually half-inch sheetrock is going to match up to half-inch sheetrock or half-inch whatever I use as my backer inside my shower. I think what he has is 5/8 sheetrock because yes, and back in the day they made 5/8 sheetrock. It could be, but when I've had that proudness of that sheetrock going into my backer board, I taper out mud to the left of where his hand is at. My taper might be out 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 inches. So I smooth out and taper out the mud from the sheetrock out to my backer board. And I use a 10-inch taping, or not taping knife, sheetrock knife for that. I don't know. This is not anything that I would ever even think about doing.
So to get them flush with each other, I used my oscillating multi-tool with a flat plunge blade, and I just removed a little bit of material so that I could tape and thin set this just like the other seams. I'm using leftover thin set from my kitchen backsplash. It's pretty standard stuff. It is white though, and that's going to be pretty convenient to see against this gray fiber cement board. I'll mix this up, and I'm looking for a stiff pancake batter consistency, something that'll spread well. The goal is to really utilize the 1/8 gap in between all of our panels. I want a lot of thin set to get in there and embed itself with the tape so that we achieve a really strong bond that prevents cracks over time and a waterproof seal. Keep in mind while you're working that you don't want to build up a ton of this thin set, even though you really want to embed it into that 1/8 gap. We've eventually got to put tile on this surface, so we want it to be flat as a reference face for that.
Yep.
I treated the shower niche the same as all of my panels. I made sure there was an 1/8 gap around all the edges, then I applied tape and thin set. I also applied thin set over the face of every screw.
Yep.
Finally, I hit that seam between the cement board and the existing drywall with some thin set, and this is step 3 complete.
I don't see he's 3, maybe 4 inches out. I don't see his backer board being, the sheetrock being proud of the backer board and how that little 3, if he put a straight edge on there, I'm absolutely positive that would rock, like your level or whatever straight edge would rock, because it's not tapered out enough. But, you know, it's not my job, it's his.
Moving on. Step number 4 is getting our curb ready for tile. And I've already gone ahead and pre-cut 3 pieces of fiber cement board. One for the outside, the...
Okay, interesting. Now you see that same area. Now you see where it's like 12. Hold on, let me get my glasses because that's not what he showed. No, now you see it's about 12, 14 inches tapered out. You see it feathered out on that right side? Right where he was showing where he just stuck it in. You know, details matter. So people are going to, you know, like get on board with him and go, oh, I can just do this. And then they get stuck with something kind of silly like that because he didn't show it all tapered out, feathered out the way it is now. But I see it now, obviously.
Inside and the top. The first piece I'll attach is the outside face. I'll screw this down and make sure it's flush with the pan liner. Next, I'll attach the top piece, and you can see that I'm screwing it towards the outside half of the piece, and that's going to be past where our shower door sets. And finally, I screwed in the inside piece, and I attached these screws towards the top of the board I want to get ahead of the comments that are going to say that I shouldn't puncture the shower liner, and I agree 100% if I was not using RedGuard in the next step to waterproof everything.
Okay, true enough. But here's the issue that I take, and this is the way I do it also. I screw the inside, the outside, and the top of my backer board, whatever it is, right into the pan liner. Couple of things. First of all, the pan liner is not your waterproofer. Your pan liner arguably is a backup system in case you made a mistake at the surface. A lot of people out there will say that tile is not porous. Sorry, that a tile is porous, and that's garbage. There's a lot of large format tile, or even the smaller format tile, the porcelain tile, especially the one that's polished and has a nice glaze on it, that 100% is waterproof. So all those people that say, "Oh, your tile isn't waterproof," sure it is, especially in a vertical. So that is your first line of defense. Your second line of defense should be your waterproofer. And if you're going to use epoxy grout, that's your second line of defense. Your third line of defense would be your waterproofer, whatever that happens to be. If it's Kerdi, if it's any cloth membrane, or if it's any liquid topical membrane like Aqua Defense or Hydroban or 8+9, any of those things is your line of defense. On top of the curb, there's going to be a monolithic curb top, what they call sill. I don't like calling it sill because it's a curb top to me. It's 6 inches wide by however length you need. That's your line of defense also. That's your first line of defense. Everything underneath it is second, third, and fourth line of defense. So the pan liner being perforated right there doesn't matter. The problem with his build is that his backer board on his curb on the inside that you're looking at is still 1/8 of an inch off of the floor, and he's going to fill that with thinset. So now the shower pan itself, the mortar, is married to that piece, that little skinny piece there, which when that pan gets wet will wick up into that little piece there. So despite and regardless that he waterproofs the surface, he has those touching. So it's going to wick into that, which is going to thereby wick into the curb material, which on the top there is another piece of HardieBacker, and then it's going to go back out onto his subfloor outside where he's got his knees at. Trust me, I've seen it. I've torn out enough showers to see that wicking action happen, and it will ruin the outside subfloor because he's not waterproofing the entirety of the shower. Everything else, I'm okay with. But the fact that he has those touching, and the fact that he thinks, "Oh, I'm waterproofing the outside," but you didn't monolithically waterproof the whole thing. Your whole shower should be functional before one tile goes on it. I'm just saying.
That's step number 4 complete. I'll let that cure overnight, and we'll be back tomorrow for step number 5. Now let's finish up this shower. This is RedGuard. It's a liquid waterproofing membrane, and there's a few other products out there that are like this. We're going to paint this on the walls of our shower and around the curb so that our fiber cement board backing is 100% shower proof. In fact, you can paint this stuff onto a mortar bed and it can act as a shower pan liner.
Right.
It's a really cool new product that they didn't have
Then why didn't you do that?
back in the day. It's just a great extra step to make sure that everything is waterproof, where before they had this, shower installs would basically stop at step 4. One thing I've seen in other videos is people recommending applying this RedGuard to the corners really heavy. Now, I don't disagree that you want 100% coverage and you don't want to see any spots through the red, but make sure that you don't get any runs. If you cake this on or apply it too thick, it won't be able to cure properly and it'll be more prone to cracking over time. So ironically, it's kind of working against what you want. The directions call for a 3/4 inch nap roller, which is pretty aggressive. It holds quite a bit of material, but that's a good thing, especially on this first coat, because it really soaks up a lot of material.
Okay, so this is basically, if you see where he took the brush and RedGuarded around the shower valve, he's making all these lines, and all the lines that he did on the corners and all that stuff with the brush first, and then you go to the roller afterward. That's exactly the way I do it. After this first coat, and after it dries from pink to red, about an hour or so with a fan on it, then I'll go back in for a second coat. And the second coat is fine. I have plenty of videos on my YouTube channel going back 8, 9, 10, 12 years ago where I painted cardboard box. I think 2, 3. No, I did 2 cardboard box experiments with RedGuard. Only 2 coats on a cardboard box, and the other one was sheetrock. 4 pieces of sheetrock. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The bottom and all 4 sides were sheetrock. and I painted 2 coats on and let it set for like over a week, and there was any kind of nothing going on. So that being said, what he's doing is okay. And why I like HardieBacker better, because it doesn't have all the nooks and crannies that Wonderboard and Durarock have. If you do Wonderboard or Durarock, I highly, highly recommend that you turn the rough surface around facing against you, right? So you have a smooth surface to put this red guard on. The reason that they have the rough surface is because before there was waterproofing, you want the thin set when you're tiling to get into those nooks and crannies and get a better hold to your tile. But since we're not tiling on top of the backer board, we're tiling on top of the red guard, it's irrelevant which way your backer board faces. So I highly suggest with Durarock and Wonderboard that you flip it around. The rough side should be not showing. Do the smooth side. You'll thank me later.
I've also seen people spread and smooth this with a V-notch trowel. I think that's a way of getting a really thick first coat. But for me, I prefer a roller.
Never, ever, ever. Did I say ever? Never use a V-notch trowel to spread out red guard. No, 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 no.
Because I paint stuff all the time and I'm pretty much used to it. I applied a little strip of red guard to the subfloor in front of the shower. That's totally not necessary, but I figured it wasn't a bad idea.
It'll be necessary for you because you've caused wicking action for your curb. But honestly, no. Wasn't getting after him again. Honestly, yes. I usually go outside on the floor, especially on a wood subfloor, about the 5 or 6 inches that he's got right there. Why not? When people come in and out of the shower, they're slopping water on the floor. And even though there's tile there, it still gets through the grout line. So yeah, I still put it there. I don't like the idea. He's got tape down there at the bottom of the backer board. I don't know. I don't remember watching the video why he has the blue painter's tape over there by his right knee. That kind of is a little bit spooky also. I don't like that.
Then I waited for about an hour or so and did a second coat on everything. On this second coat, the fiber cement board didn't soak up nearly as much like it did on the first. I probably only used about half as much as I did on the first go round.
Right.
In total, I brushed on 3 coats of the red guard to all of the interior corners just to make sure I got a really good coat. And on the curb, I applied 4. I had a little extra red guard left over, so I figured I might as well use it.
Sure.
And quick tip, it's a good idea to peel your masking tape before this cures because it turns into a rubber film that's pretty hard to peel the masking tape away from.
Yes. Okay, so I see what he did. He was he used a piece of paper. So he basically is protecting his shower pan from getting red guard on it, which is kind of counterproductive. I don't know. And that's why the tape was there. So I know now what he did. But if I look closely, I can't see. I don't know if I can see it or not. His lighting on this shower is really, really bad. He should have had a drop light there. But I think that bottom inch of the backer board is exposed because the tape is off now. I don't like that one bit.
With that, step 5 is complete. We're done. So check it out. This is how everything looked the next day when it had cured. Taking the time to mask everything cleanly definitely paid off around the niche and around all of my edges. Our walls are waterproof. Our mortar bed is ready. Let's get some tile.
Okay. Again, I can't see it because his lighting really sucks on this, but I can almost guess that tape had to stick to something and it wasn't sticking to the mortar pan. I can almost guarantee it was onto the HardieBacker. So he's got at least, if not half an inch more of that tape that did not protect the backer board. So in other words, that bottom piece of backer board that I talked about hitting the pan is definitely hitting the pan now. And then he's going to put tile up to that. And I don't know. I don't know. There's a couple of things, even on part 1 where he did his mortar bed, that I don't like at all. The mortar bed looked really wonky. And I talked about that, and it really bothers me a lot because it shouldn't be that way. He should have tore out the mortar bed and started from scratch. That was a serious topic that I wanted to go over. A couple of things on video 1. I think video 2, a couple of serious things too. And this is what I really want to focus on. Again, not to be redundant, he is going to do a water in, water out system on this shower, which makes no sense whatsoever because we're not doing that anymore. But on top of that, he's got a bare mortar bed that he's going to put tile on and let that water just kind of like do what it does and wick up all his backer board that's touching the mortar. It makes no sense. Just absolutely blows my mind that he would put out this type of video out there. If anybody is out there that is going to contemplate doing their own shower, and has run across his videos and you haven't done your own shower yet, trust me when I say this. Don't leave it like this. Don't half-ass do it. Either do a water in, water out system, or do a sealed system, as we call it, with the RedGuard, Aqua Defense, Hydroban, Curdy material, whatever you want to use, but don't mix the two together like this. This is where all your failure happens, from your mortar bed and your curb, basically. When I said the walls never fail, trust me, they never fail. But the Achilles heel of every shower is you're going to be your mortar bed and your curb. And he took care of the curb, but failed to take care of the mortar bed. And they're married, so you've already asked for a problem. Another thing too, I noticed that I didn't say anything about, he doesn't need to RedGuard all the way up to the ceiling. He has an extra long distance from his shower valve to where his tub shower, or sorry, where his shower head is going to be, which, you know, it looks to me like 5-6 inches from the top. So there's a reason why he went to the top, but you really don't need to. A couple, 3 or 4 inches above where your shower head is going to be is fine. I don't know why he went all the way up to the ceiling, but yeah. Oh shit, that's it. I cut myself short. I should have come on and talked about all that stuff with my mug here. So yeah, again, friendly critique in so far as he doesn't do showers on a normal. He doesn't do tile on you know, a normal type of basis and all that stuff. And so he does have some, as we started the video out, a lot of mistakes that he makes, and he rectifies them. Here's the issue though. Any mistake that he's made currently on this video, if all you did is want to know how to waterproof a shower or put a backer board or whatever, and if all you needed to know was that, and you watched his video, and then you go away to do your own, and you don't know that he made a mistake, guess what? The next video that he posts has all his mistakes on it. And that's what kind of like chaps me a little bit. That just kind of irritates me, because it's disingenuous to put out information out there. And even when he prefaced, he's like, you know, oh, well, the mistake would be making mistakes and not saying anything about it. No, the mistake is that you're making the mistakes. Again, YouTube University has been out here now for 17 years. I've been around for 14 years on YouTube. Other guys have been around for 5, 10 years, whatever. He could have gathered all this information ahead of time before he made a video. It would have made him look more professional. It would have made DIYers and people that came on his channel more knowledgeable and knowing that they did the right job, rather than, you know, having a faux going on. The same faux he did on the last video, where he's like, oh, I made a mistake on the shower drain because I made the locking flange stick to the weep holes and now water can't go out. But you're posting that on your second video, not the first one when you made the mistake. I don't know. It irritates me. I'm going to get on to part 4, which is going to be the tiling stage. And I don't know that I'm going to critique him a lot, but there's probably some hints that I'm going to be able to tell you along the way. So there will be a part 4, maybe a part 5, but I'm not sure at this point. Anyway, stay tuned to my channel and you shall see what a true tile guy thinks about this guy that is not a tile guy. He's really not. Hey, if you enjoyed that video and you learned something, consider being a Patreon member. $5, $10, $15 a month would help me greatly produce more videos. I make nothing from YouTube at all. If you're going to call me for advice, please donate $50 for 30 minutes. My link to my PayPal and my Patreon account is down below. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get immediate notifications as soon as I post videos. And thank you very much for your support.